Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to appeal the ruling of the chair on the germaneness of the amendment at the desk, which amends the executive law of the state of New York, which is the same section of law that the bill before the House amends. Therefore, it is germane. However, far moreover than that, it is germane, this amendment, to every piece of legislation we are passing in this Senate. Every piece we've passed over the last several weeks, every piece of legislation we've passed since March 3rd, when the governor's emergency powers were granted. It is time that this body, this state legislature, get back involved in the business of government and the most fundamental process of checks and balances of an executive branch and a governor that continues to issue edicts with unilateral and dictatorial authority that this legislature has not responded to. This side of the aisle, the minority, since the middle of May, about a month and a half, 6 weeks after this emergency power was authorized, we brought this amendment to terminate the governor's emergency powers to issue directives, which in fact are edicts with the force of law. At a minimum, the legislature should be requiring the governor to report to the legislature his activities on the coronavirus epidemic, on what he intends to proceed to do, on why his edicts are necessary to continue for a period longer than 30 days. And we, as a legislative body, should be deliberating over those and checking this governor's out-of-control dictatorial edicts coming down on the citizens of New York State, across the state. Our economy continues to struggle under many of these edicts that the governor has put forth. It continues to struggle fiscally. Yet the governor has no qualms about whining that the federal government needs to send us more money because of our fiscal distress, a significant portion of which the governor himself has directed. This needs to end. We have a system of checks and balances in this country and in this state, co-equal branches of government: the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. Thank God the judiciary has not walked away from their role in this process with an extremely important decision in Erie County just a week or so ago, setting forth that the governor's edict on orange zones and indoor dining, shuttering restaurants across New York State, was baseless, was arbitrary, was capricious, and had no sound basis in medicine or science. Yet, restaurants in New York City continue to be shut down. Most of this other side of the aisle, the majority, the supermajority of the Senate, represents New York City. Yet they sit back and allow their restaurants to be closed, shuttered, to operate. While, according to the governor's own numbers, restaurants have only accounted for about 1.4% of COVID spread in this state. It's an unwarranted intrusion into the civil liberties and rights of these small business owners to operate in the state of New York under arbitrary and capricious restrictions. We have brought this hostile amendment 6 times now. Every time it's been brought in this House, every Republican has voted to terminate the governor's emergency powers. Not one Democrat in 6 times that we brought this has rose up and said, I agree, we should terminate the governor's emergency powers. How can these members of this supermajority sit back, derelict in their duties of the most basic aspects of checks and balances in our process? Thank God for the judiciary in Erie County and allowing these small businesses to reopen. Restaurants in my home county of Chemung County, a small county, were shuttered for 3 months this time, and 2 months the first time. Yet when Governor Cuomo was asked in a press conference by a reporter from Elmira, New York, what, Governor, do you have to say about the restaurants being closed in Chemung County when we have some of the best numbers COVID-wise in the state? Lowest region of percentage positives, best hospital availability in the state, yet those restaurants continued to be closed for 3 months. And the governor complains about fiscal impacts to the state when those businesses are not allowed to be in business, they're not allowed to generate revenue, which would go into the state coffers, yet the governor continues to whine to the federal government, give me more, without fully explaining clearly what our deficit situation is in New York State. Certainly I don't mean to intend to say that these restaurants being open would be the savior of our fiscal problems in New York State. Clearly not. We have fiscal problems in this state, and we had a $6 billion fiscal problem in this state prior to COVID ever coming into play. These unprecedented powers, in addition to which the majorities of the legislature authorized the governor unilateral powers on the budget to control spending, to make cuts, to which the governor really has not done anything but kick the can down the road and whine to the federal government for more handouts. We are here as the voice of our constituents to represent them in the state of New York, to allow them to pursue their livelihoods, to do business and not be shut down under arbitrary and capricious decisions of this government, of this governor. Since this executive order has been in place, since the emergency powers were granted to the governor had made the fateful decision to send COVID-positive hospital patients into nursing homes, which was immediately objected to by medical groups across the country as dangerous, not based in science, and is going to help spread the cause. Yet this governor continues to hide by not responding to FOIL requests on what the impact of that was. He hasn't reported to the legislature what the impacts of that nursing home crisis was. He hides the numbers of deaths of nursing home patients that went to a hospital and died there. It's unconscionable that this legislature sits back and allows these powers to continue. Under these powers, the governor threatened upstate hospitals that he was going to send the National Guard to get their ventilators, to get their PPE and other medical supplies, to send to another part of the state without asking cooperatively, threatening. The governor then came up with his baseless orange, yellow, and red zones that fortunately the Erie County Court threw out as regards to indoor dining at a minimum. Now the governor, in recent weeks, has threatened hospitals and medical providers that if you vaccinate the wrong person, I'm going to fine you $1 million. How is this working together cooperatively on this crisis we have at hand? Enough of the finger pointing at the federal government, at local governments, and enough of this legislative body standing by and watching and not ending these powers. The governor, the majority here boasts of their supermajority powers. And one of the first things they do in the opening weeks of this year's session is move to revise an independent redistricting commission that hasn't even been utilized once. Yet they want to change it so they have total control and take the independent out of the independent redistricting commission. What are the priorities of the majorities in this state legislature? It's mind-boggling to me. Since March 3rd, the governor has had emergency powers. 323 days, 46 weeks. Just 6 more weeks, you will have had him for a full year. That's 88% of a full year so far, while this legislature has not been in the process of checks and balances of this out-of-control governor. 88% of our members' salaries during that period, $96,800 for work our constituents expect us to be doing. How can the majority members of this legislative body sit back and allow the governor's emergency powers to continue? With a supermajority, they're content to hide behind the governor, making all these decisions. I don't know how you go back to your constituents in your districts, particularly restaurateurs. Say, well, we got to allow the governor to continue. He says so. Even though upstate says that's baseless, arbitrary, capricious, we're going to allow him to continue to shut down your businesses. These majorities of the Senate and the Assembly need to act. We need to act today at a minimum of requiring the governor to report back to us every 30 days on what he's doing, what he's directing, what he's issuing edicts on, and why they should continue. It's unconscionable and a dereliction of the duty of this entire state legislature, but particularly the majorities of this legislature in each house that has a supermajority. Yet they cower behind this governor, allowing him to continue to issue these edicts, which are baseless, which are killing small businesses. This needs to end today. This legislature needs to get back in the process of checks and balances. Thank God for the judiciary in Erie County on that decision. But why should the citizens of the state of New York have to bring lawsuit after lawsuit at their expense against this governor, arbitrary and capricious edicts? That's our job. State legislators. We've continued now for 323 days. $96,800 of our annual salary sitting back and hiding behind the governor and not checking and balancing his power. That, Mr. President, I urge votes to overturn the ruling of the chair. Thank you, Mr. President.